All right, Algebra 2 students, quick video with lots of vocab and some big ideas. So, first, polynomials. I'll let you read that. And I'm writing something down I expect you to write. All right, have you read it? Hope so. So all we're talking about here is an algebraic expression that consists of terms and values. This is the general polynomial. A sub n x to the n plus a to the n minus 1 x to the n a sub n minus 1 x to the n minus 1 power all the way down to a sub 1 x to the first plus a sub 0 x to the 0. Now we should know x to the 0 is 1, so we don't need to write that, so it's really just plus a sub 0. This sounds really complicated, but you kids are Algebra 2 students that are going to be taking calculus as seniors, maybe even as juniors. You need to see some complicated math terms. They're not that complicated if you break it down. So look at the next, this is the general polynomial. Look at the next slide. We got a couple examples. So this is a 12th degree polynomial. That's the degree. We call the first term here, we call this 5 the leading coefficient. We call it the leading coefficient because it is the first coefficient of the highest power. This is called the constant. Not every polynomial has a constant, but every polynomial has a leading coefficient. This next one is a 4th degree. The leading coefficient is 1 and the constant is 1. The next polynomial is a 23rd degree, and it has a leading coefficient of 56 and a constant of 0. This one you should know and love. This is pretty simple, but it's a 1st degree polynomial. 1st degree has a special name. It's also called a linear equation or linear expression. 5 is the leading coefficient, -7 is the constant. And a is a 0 degree polynomial because you can imagine this has like a little x to the 0. And it also has a special name called a constant. You just spent an entire chapter with 2nd degree polynomials, and 2nd degree polynomials are called quadratics. Other names you might see, 3rd degree polynomials are called cubic, and 4th degree polynomials are sometimes called quartic, but that is not used as often as these other terms. You have to be able to write a polynomial in descending order. And when we say descending order, all we want are the powers to go from biggest to smallest. Constants always last. The powers always go biggest to smallest. Good? That's descending order. And then the leading coefficient, you want to be able to know if it's positive or negative. And the constant, you want to know where that is. All right, take a look at some things that are not polynomials. So if we go back here, it says the power must be positive or 0. So if you look at these examples, non-negative exponents. This is not a polynomial because 15x to the -8 is actually 15 over x to the 8th, and that's in the denominator. That's a negative exponent. Doesn't work. This can be rewritten as x to the 1/2, and again, that's not an integer, so this is not a polynomial. And then this here is not a polynomial because of the x in the denominator. Without that term, without this term, and without this term, they are polynomials. But because those terms are in there, none of those are polynomials. Now, you have been studying polynomials for a long time. They may not have been called that. But polynomials, underneath that big umbrella, are quadratics, which we studied a lot, and linear functions, which I hope you know a lot about. Quadratics look like this. Linear functions look like this. And those two ideas can help us get some major concepts about polynomial functions. So what I want you to do before you come to school tomorrow is I want you to open Desmos. So just Google the term if you have never done this before, Desmos. It's a free graphing calculator online. And I want you to graph y equals x cubed minus x squared plus x plus 1. And then I want you to change this to negative x cubed minus x squared plus x plus 1. So notice all I did was change this leading coefficient from positive 1 to negative 1. Tell me what happens when you do that. Write that down. I want you to graph on Desmos x to the fourth plus 3x squared plus 2. And I want you to graph negative x to the fourth minus 3x squared minus 2. Now that one's different. I multiplied everything by negative 1. And I want you to tell me what happens there. Then I want you to play around with this number and this number. And I want you to play around with this number and this number. I want you to change the leading coefficients, and I want you to change the degree of the polynomial function. And then I want you to tell me tomorrow what happens when you have an odd degree polynomial, what happens when you have an even degree polynomial, what happens when the leading coefficient is positive or the leading coefficient is negative. And there should be a little matrix to fill out there. That's your homework for tonight. What happens when you have a positive leading coefficient and it's odd, a positive leading coefficient and it's even, a negative leading coefficient and it's an odd degree, a negative leading coefficient and it's even? All right, shouldn't take you too long. You don't have to use Desmos. You can use your graphing calculator if that's all you got. But if you're watching this on the internet with your laptop, then you have Desmos right there. All right, peace.